All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 79. Every week, Matt and I do this going live with good soil live stream on our YouTube channel. And maybe the last, I think almost a year, we've been doing it on Twitter Spaces at the same time now. Um, yeah, I see it. There's a lot of great YouTubers on Tesla, and they even do like live stream chats. I know Farzad does them sometimes, Yashu, and yeah, I would encourage any YouTube live streamers on Tesla to just also do the spaces at the same time, because there's a lot of people who on spaces want to hear, live stream talk about Tesla too, and they're not always on YouTube, for example. So you get a much better, bigger reach, I think, if you do both at the same time, right, Matt?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were surprised on our spaces last week. I think we had like 1,000 people, so
Yeah,
definitely comparable reach to what we were seeing live on YouTube.
yeah,
And I think that'll kind of continue to change. I think more and more people are using spaces,
yeah, absolutely.
but I
Especially
don't
that
think
Elon
people came
jumped
here
out.
to. I
No,
was
they
gonna
didn't
say I don't
talk.
think people came here to talk about
No,
spaces.
not at all. Yeah, I mean, looking at the comment section, the YouTube live, it's just like, where's the bottom? It's just crisis mode here. Every week, every Tuesday, the last several Tuesdays, it's a new low. I mean, it's comically sad, that this weird, what do they call it? Like when you have to like jump over the lines a certain way in a baseball field, like baseball players start doing. What do they call that when you have like
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
tradition
I know what
you
you're
do
talking
every
about.
time
Yeah.
to try to get a good luck for a hit or a baseball? But it feels like it's sort of something like that going on here with these weekly live streams. Every Tuesday guarantees like a new low on Tesla. Part of me thinks that's true now, and like maybe we need to just do this off market hours or something. But it's good therapy for us at least to talk it out. This is sort of me and Matt are just having like a live meeting here publicly talking about Tesla and what our learnings are of it, and the production delivery numbers came out. I mean, there's not really a whole lot macro market to discuss. Usually our outline is macro market, then Tesla. There's nothing really important macro market this week, right? I mean, there's like the minutes coming out, but really it's the
Yeah.
start of a new year. We don't really know what's going to go on with the macro market yet for this start of the new year. There can't be any more tax harvesting. We know that, right? But I'm not sure what's gonna go on and start in the new year here. So maybe more of the same. Looks like today the market's kind of trading sideways down a little bit. The Nasdaq's down 1%. Apple's down 4%. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I didn't look at Apple if there's any news driving that, but Tesla's down almost 15% to 106, a new 52-week low, a new 3-year lower, it seems like, right? I mean, this is pretty low.
Yeah, so, I mean, somewhere in that, not quite 3 years, because I
Two
think,
and a half year low, maybe
2019 was
3 year low.
the. Yeah, yeah. But, yeah, like, this Tuesday thing is kinda crazy. Now, granted, most days have been red lately in general, but, I saw somebody in the comments says, "I'm gonna start shorting every Tuesday." Like, that maybe
Yeah,
that's a strategy we could implement, but, do you ever
yeah.
see Office Space, that
I
movie?
I did see that,
It
yes.
it reminds me of there's a line in there, it's like, "Every day in my life is worse than the day before." That means that every day you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
just
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's kind of what it seems like is going on with Tesla. Like, I thought 200 was crazy, and then, 175 I was like, "This is really nuts." And
yeah.
sure enough,
All the
we
way
get cut,
down.
like,
We
almost
just
in
broke
half
it at
again from those
105.
levels.
Yeah, 105.90, man. There's just tons of volume today too. 135 million shares already today. It's on track for well over 200 million today. So the market is not liking the lower delivery number. I mean, production is probably in line with, or maybe even high. Is production higher than what people estimated, or about the same?
It was about in line. Yeah. I think like
Yeah,
a lot of I think the Wall Street analysts and kind of the Twitter analysts were in like the 138, 139 range. So, they
138,
were.
439. Yeah,
Oh yes, sorry, 438, 439.
that was like 3 years ago when it was at 138. Yeah,
130. I'm thinking of stock prices, 138,
yeah.
139. That'd be great. No, yeah. So they were pretty close on the production side, but I think the thing that's worrying people is demand concern. So if these vehicles were just in transit to customers, that wouldn't be so bad.
Hmm.
But the one thing I noticed, or so somebody pointed out in one of the Twitter threads, was that the company actually released or changed their wording on the production and delivery report. So last quarter, when they ended the wave, they said, these these extra vehicles in transit have been ordered by customers and are kind of on route to their customers. But they removed that language.
Really?
And so, yeah, when you start kind of adding the pieces together, I mean, it does definitely seem to be the case that the order rate has been lower than the production rate for probably the last 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big change. And so if that situation continues, which I think it certainly should, then, you kind of need to start pulling some of these demand levers, price being the most obvious one. Hopefully the IRA will help with part of that, but even
Yeah.
that's less of a win than I think people were hoping it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. The IRA will help, but yeah, demand levers, price, and FSD technology improvements. I think those are the two major demand levers here. And um, I think price goes first. I think they're going to start lowering prices this quarter. Um, and just to clear all the inventory out at the end as much as possible next quarter. I mean, they'll still be 50 or between. I think they'll going forward for the next few quarters. I wouldn't be surprised to see a steady, rate of 50 to 100,000 in transit, and that's basically what it's at now, right? Isn't there like 60 or 70,000 cars in transit, I think, or something this quarter? That haven't been sold total, or 50,000. So I think we're going to get used to having 50 to 100,000 cars in transit, which means going forward that the production and delivery numbers should line up more. If we're already close to that range of 50 to 100,000 in transit at the end of every quarter, then to stay at where, if we have the same number of cars in transit at the end of next quarter, then of course you subtract a few new showroom cars, maybe if they open new showrooms in new places, but that's de minimis really. So I think that means the production number for Q1 should match delivery number for Q1 more closely versus like the big discrepancy last quarter and this quarter, which is really only like a few days of inventory. Like it's kind of crazy that everyone's freaking out because they have 13 days of inventory versus like the rest of the global auto markets at like 50 days or 100 days of global inventory or something.
Yeah, yeah, and I saw like Brad Munchin, who's a big kind of loud Tesla Q account. He had a chart going back several years of Tesla's end of quarter inventory, and it obviously shows a huge spike up right now. Well, that doesn't kind of account for the fact that like the Tesla's overall delivery volume has like tripled or quadrupled over that same time period.
Volume
Well,
too,
yeah, their production volume. So when you're showing that increase in absolute terms rather than in like days sales outstanding, which is kind of like the more volume
yeah,
neutral way to look at it,
yeah,
it's very exaggerated, but still, to your point, like way lower than traditional automakers. But I think the
yeah.
concern, and I can kind of appreciate this, is Q4 is historically the strongest quarter for auto sales. So if Q1 is historically the weakest, which I think it is, even just doing what you said and having production match or having deliveries more closely match production, that means that you're going to need a lot more demand or price cuts to stoke that demand or something like that. I don't know what Troy's estimate is, but if you're trying to do 450 to 500 somewhere in that range, in this macroeconomic environment, like that's a significant increase from the 405,000 that was delivered in Q4. So to get that extra very meaningful boost, I think they do need to start pulling some levers. And frankly,
Yeah.
I'd be excited if they started advertising or something. I think they could have a pretty high ROI on some of these non-traditional levers that they haven't needed to or wanted to pull. I think to me, it just seems like it's time to start pulling those.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about this March 1st annual invest? This is new. This is puzzling. Like it
Yeah.
seems like unnecessary. Like they have their annual, shareholder event, and then they have their AI day, which is in the fall. That's going to do that presumably every year
Mhm.
going forward to kind of recruit and show what they're doing on AI front. But now they have this new thing, the investor day. It's like, what the heck? What do you think is up with that? Have you thought about that? I mean, that seems a little. I don't know if they're what the deal is there. I mean, it's March 1st, right? I mean, what do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought they were pulling ahead their annual investor meeting at first, but then Martin Viecha clarified that this is actually separate from the shareholder meeting. So
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people speculating that it might be the new kind of Gen 3 platform, make a kind of a product announcement about that. I'm not sure that would be ready yet, but I think
Mm.
that could be really interesting and potentially a real positive catalyst if that was the case. Um,
Yeah.
I think the things I highlighted in there were, kind of the focus on the Austin line and 4680s and some of those things, which I think are going to be interesting to see. But I don't think they would have an investor day like that if there wasn't going to be something kind of more material than just tour our new production lines. I
Yeah.
think there's going to be something there. And I don't
I
know,
can see
the
it.
Gen 3 platform might make sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's a Gen 3 platform. I think it's going to be the unveiling of like a more formal unveiling of Master Plan Part 3, like the outline for the blueprint for Tesla going forward of how they're going to scale to 20 million cars a year, by the end of the decade. That's the plan. And they're going to just go over like we're going to have these many gigafactories. We might have to get into mining, procurement and all this stuff. And possibly they have delivery. I think before the Model 2 unveil, I think they have the first deliveries of the Cybertruck. I don't think I think the Cybertruck is like, it's this year sometime. It's in 2023 sometime. And they might, if they think demand could be soft for much of this year because of recession for the Model Y, Model 3 and such globally, maybe they pull up the entry timing of the Cybertruck into the market. That's maybe they're working on that. And Tom Zhu or Tom Su, am I saying his name right? I think
You,
he's Tom Zhu. He's in Tesla Gigafactory Austin, just promoted apparently to be the head of U.S. Head of U.S. sales and deliveries and production as well, which is really impressive, feat for a person coming from China to, help re-engineer or get the manufacturing lines going and more efficient at Fremont and Austin, right? What are your thoughts about that? I mean, we've
yeah.
been
Well,
speculating about this person for a
a
while.
quick side note. A lot of people in the comments noted that the Generation 3 platform is noted in the press release, and that's true actually. So
Okay.
probably just an oversight on our part. It does explicitly say that. So whether I think there's a question of how much will they say about that. But
Okay.
to me that's obviously the big thing. So I think we
Okay.
messed that up a little bit.
So
But
the
yeah,
press release for Investor Day that says Gen 3 is going to be unveiled, or it just says they're going
yeah.
to talk
So
about Gen 3?
it says our investors will be able to see our most advanced production line, as well as discuss long-term expansion plans, which I think gets to what you were saying, Generation 3 platform, capital allocation, and other subjects with our leadership team.
So I think they discuss it, but I don't think they unveil the product. I still don't think they unveiled the actual prototype of the Gen 3. That's my thought.
It's ambiguous, at least. Yeah, it's.
Mhm. I think they
But
would
I mean,
discuss it
that's.
though, for sure.
I'm kind of curious about this though, and we'll get back to your question in a second. But this is the one that in that recent interview, Franz said he was the most excited about, and Elon was basically saying it would outsell Model 3, Y, S, and X combined.
Well, Franz
And so
didn't necessarily say. He said he didn't necessarily say that Gen 3 platform is the one people are assuming that's what he's talking about, but I'm not
I'm
sure that's
assuming,
necessarily
like,
true.
what else would he be working on? I guess that's the question.
I don't know. I
It's
mean, Elon has
either
referred to lots of products. He has referred to multiple most exciting product roadmap. It doesn't. To me, it seems like they have multiple things. Maybe it could be a vertical takeoff and landing. They're in early design stages of doing something there. Like there could be. I don't know. There could be lots of products in their kind of being worked on that we might not see for another 3 or 4 years. Unveiled prototypes. So Franz is at the earliest design stages of these products, and if they take 2, 3, 4, 5 years until they're like the prototype actually gets unveiled and ready to be delivered a year or two from there. He's seen these way earlier than we would anticipate, I think.
yeah, and we're several years out from production, I think. So it's
Yeah.
just seeing it. I
But it
think will
could be.
be
I mean, I'm
interesting.
saying it could be. It could be like maybe it's 60 or 70% chance he's talking about that, like the robotaxi or the Gen 3 platform. But I'm just saying we make sure he didn't say that specifically. We're just kind of
Yeah.
inferring that.
Yeah, definitely. So, but getting back to Tom Zhu, so we had a really interesting conversation with Leon Wu, who is a guy who actually works directly with Tom in Tesla China. Just this morning, we got this report that Tom was going to be taking over the global like auto and sales function.
Hmm.
And so, to me, it seems like really good news. I mean, you can't have Elon in charge of everything, and the biggest piece of the whole business right now is very obviously kind of automotive manufacturing, production and sales.
Yeah.
And the kind of takeaways that I had from that conversation were like, this is a very quick learner, like a ridiculously hard worker. I mean, just the hours that he keeps is like there was somebody in the comments said that the Tesla China team refers to Tom as little Elon. And like, that's a pretty high praise, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is big news. I mean, there's been a lot of, even in the comments still, we're seeing a lot of frustration with Elon's antics and just the way that he's handled things in the last 6 months or so. And so I think to get somebody in there to play that Gwynne Shotwell role is going to be a good thing overall.
Focus on ramping up the manufacturing, because Elon his main focus is Twitter, and he's delegating the manufacturing ramp to other managers, senior managers in Tesla Giga. I'm not sure if you heard, but there's this there's a guy, Trey Wheeler, I guess. He's a Tesla Giga Factory Texas, production lead or something, production manager. And he's been on Twitter pretty active lately. And I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. I mean, sure, he's free to talk his mind and so forth. He's only been at Tesla for like a year and a half, I think. From what he was on, I listened to the recording of a discussion of him talking with value analyst. The guy who's kind of like the Uber bull, or put a spaces together, and this guy Trey Wheeler went on, and I'm just not sure how I feel about Tesla, senior employees getting on Twitter Spaces to kind of like, just nonchalantly talk about what's going on. I just thought, I listened to it and I just thought, I don't know, maybe there needs to be more maturity at the Tesla Gigafactory Texas plant to help ramp things up. And I'm like, that's why Tom Su is there, is to like be a professional manufacturing manager and get things up to speed efficiently, because there is a lot of younger people there that maybe need to mature, or maybe, they were just hired quickly because trying to get people there to fill job roles, weren't entirely qualified, and they're just kind of like have these titles, but they're not really, producing the way, Tesla Shanghai did, of course. Right. So presumably there's not a lot of, bureaucratic red tape in Texas for Tesla, to deal with. Right. So the ramp, unlike Berlin, which I feel like has a lot of that, Texas is a little bit disappointing to a lot of folks with the, I feel like some of the ramp has not been as fast as people anticipated. So maybe Tom and his team are there to really push things forward and just like say, hey, we're the veterans. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Let's plant ourselves here and get the production ramps going professional, up to speed, like Tesla style,
Yeah. So it's interesting. It made me think of Elon's comments a while back that, the work ethic in China was just like way better than what he saw in the US. And like
that.
Tom is like very emblematic of that. I mean, just the ridiculous amount of hours that he's working. To me, it seems entirely likely that kind of this culture, kind of lack of maturity, part of the culture could be in play. Like, this is all speculation on my end. I haven't really spent time with anyone. I didn't hear that.
Speculation.
But Tesla's in a pretty comfortable place right now relative to when Shanghai was ramping. So like I could certainly at least understand the temptation of workers in Austin to be like, well, we're trying really hard and we're just running into problems and it's hard. And like, well, it is. But like,
they're probably trying harder than most U.S. manufacturing employees in the U.S., I'm sure. Right. Yeah. But relative to China.
Yeah, relative to China, and like when Fremont was in that situation and the company was going to go bankrupt, they found out like how to just like use all these old parts and built a new tent, like assembly line in the parking lot. Like it was just life or death. And like the employees in Texas definitely don't have that
hanging over
that
their
same
head.
sort of like, you just sense of urgency. And so I think somebody like Tom who can come in with that sense of urgency and say, hey, listen, like I know we're, fat, happy, and comfortable here, but we still need to like get a lot better, and we should be further along than we are. So let's do it. So I'm really excited that he's apparently going to get this new role. Hopefully he can kind of whip that plant into order. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, what other big takeaway did you have from that interview with the former Tom Zoo coworker we had? We just published this on our YouTube channel 2 days ago, actually. If anyone wants to listen, a great 1 hour interview with a former coworker of Tom in Tesla China, and just going over stories of working with Tom Zoo and even stories of Elon interacting with Tesla China and Tom and stuff. So, what was your big
Yeah, I
interesting
I
takeaway?
think the one main takeaway that maybe changed my thinking a little bit was just Leon's kind of point of view of the Chinese market, that
Yeah.
like the Model 3 and the Model Y are actually viewed as like relatively stale products relative to what some of the newer competitors are coming out with. So
Yeah.
he's a guy that's like very bullish on China long term and on Tesla in general. And so the fact that he still thought they had like pretty significant challenges, not only with like the macroeconomic situation, but just on Tesla's differentiation within that market, to me that gave a lot more weight to kind of the bear thesis, at least in the short term, for kind of demand in China.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, my biggest takeaway. But how about you?
Yeah, I would say my biggest takeaway was also that the brand in China is still strong, but it's not as big as it was before that, like, major PR event with the lady, stomping on the roof of the Tesla show in the showroom in that Tesla auto show, claiming the brakes, and how viral that went within China. He said on that day in April, like, anyone who opens up their phone, all they see is this Tesla news of brakes failing or something. He said, and he was working there at the time, and that's when Tom had to kind of step in to help mitigate the damage and do help with the communication to, but it seems like he was convinced that, that tainted the brand kind of permanently for Tesla in China. Where before that, he was saying that, people would walk into the Tesla showrooms and just like Apple, like that brand would just walk in and just buy the stuff without asking the price. They would just buy the
Yeah.
Tesla car because the brand was so strong. And then he said after that, yeah, people did not walk in and just buy it without asking the price. It was like, more compared to other, high end brands, Miao and Xiaopeng and others, Li Automotive, and people compare the differences more now. So it seems like the brand, is not a big separation factor like it was early on in Tesla China. But that doesn't mean, they can't sell as many cars as they can make in years to come. As if the economy recovers from the, COVID lockdowns, which it seems like it is now, I think that makes a big difference in Tesla China and all EVs in China. I mean, all the other Niao and Xiaopeng, didn't they just guide down to lower deliveries for Q4 recently, or one of them did? And I think all the EV manufacturers in China have been suffering in Q4, except BYD. Apparently, BYD, we checked, clarified with them, is a lower echelon, like third tier cities, lower income people buy the BYD cars, but the higher
Mhm.
end, you know, Tesla, Xiaopeng, Niao, Li Automotive, those guys displace Mercedes and BMW, versus BYD is more of a lower, people talk about that a lot. It's more of like a lower income EV model, I guess, brand.
Yeah, they've got a lot of those kind of hybrids, and then like some lower end.
BYD does.
Yeah, BYD does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and then those kind of hybrids and lower end EVs. So yeah, it really is kind of different. Like the market segmentation is really important in China, and it seems like there's a lot more kind of fierce competition among the um, like the higher echelon kind of like premium sedan segment, which Tesla's
Mhm.
clearly in.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are some big takeaways. I mean, on a positive note, what was it? Do you have a big takeaway on a positive note, though? I mean, we just talked about
Yeah, I
kind of
mean, just
two
like
depressing takeaways with Tesla
so,
China.
I think you have to take any commentary from somebody who's in the mainland China, kind of like talking about the government with a little
Yeah.
bit of a grain of salt. But I do think that his kind of overall comments on how positive the relationship between the government and China was definitely kind of affirming for Tesla's prospects in the long term. I mean, I think that was part of the reason he was so bullish on Tesla long term, because they are going to have a new
Mhm.
model eventually. There's this kind of designed in China thing that they've been working on for a while, which we don't know really anything about right now. But the fact that the government wants to foster that kind of research and development in China and have that be something that's kind of a source of national pride. He was really bullish on that long term. So I really that was a risk you and I had talked about a little bit. Like, what if if China nationalizes the Shanghai plant or something like that? Just kind of like worst case scenario of like antagonism between the U.S. and China getting out of hand, and
Yeah, that's been
Tesla
a
like
fear.
bearing the
Yeah,
brunt of that. I think that's much less likely now, and I think
yeah.
the kind
After
of
talking
concerns
with
are
them.
more like real market driven as opposed to like political.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big surprise takeaway on the positive side. Also, in my first conversation with him a couple weeks ago, same kind of surprises, like how, talking about Tom Shu and how actually efficient Tom is, and how of a, how dedicated he is to dedicating his life, to Tesla, China or Tesla, and sleeping on the factory floor, or having in a house or apartment 10 minutes away other times, and just going home for a few hours and coming back, but just being at the factory 7 days a week. It sounds like he's working 20 hours a day out of 7 days a week. It's crazy, but that's his dedication to his whole life. To He doesn't know how he does it and how efficient he is. Like looking at PR releases, he was saying within 1 minute or 30 seconds, he knows what to change on the language and gives it back to them. Or how, just the way that you have to talk to Tom. He was explaining you have like up to 50, they called it internally, like you have up to 15 seconds to get your point across to him, and then Tom, he says yes, no, or says this change should be done or whatever. Just it seems like the guy is an efficiency machine, like he's ready to be the
Yeah,
general of Tesla, like the COO, global COO, like Tim Cook style CEO of Tesla globally,
yeah.
and I think we've been talking about him for a while, speculating on him for a while. And so it just seems like more data points that it's the right move. And like we said at the end of the interview, Elon did mention when he did go to China and he was part of the grand opening ceremony, giving his talk at Tesla China, Shanghai, he said at the end, like in the Q&A or something, who knows, maybe the next global CEO of Tesla will be from China. He said that.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah, yeah,
he wouldn't say something like that loosely. He probably in his mind already was thinking of, how hardworking and how many great, executives there are in Tesla China. So yeah, in
yeah.
addition to the great, relationship that Tesla China has forged with the Chinese government, like you said, I think the Tom Shu and like living up to what my hopes are for him, Max, I think that was another nice, pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and one other thing which struck me a bit was just how unusual his kind of mode of operation is for a boss in China. So
Hmm.
like there's culturally there's this kind of like rigid respect for hierarchy within China, and like you want to like a lot of leaders kind of make their leadership be felt. At least 15 years ago, when I was spending a lot more time in China, that was definitely the way things were. I don't think things have changed a lot, but even Leon was saying the fact that Tom is so approachable, and I know in his conversation with you, he was saying like he just wears like a t-shirt and shorts or pants and something like
Yeah.
not wearing a suit or anything like that, and
Yeah.
all the kind of accoutrements of power Tom doesn't cling to at all. He's just, how can we
Yeah.
get this done in the most efficient way possible? Like even just the way that he speaks, using as few words as possible to convey the essence of a meaning and give clear direction. Like that's just very I think
Yeah.
maybe countercultural is too strong a word, but
Yeah.
not the norm for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, the stock market and this Tesla stock does not care about Tom at the moment. We're down 14%. I saw Blake Anderson in the YouTube comments just saying, lots of people saying like 50% drop, 14%. It's like I feel so bad for people with margin balances that haven't closed it. I still have a tiny margin balance in my personal account. It's grown to be not so tiny anymore, and I have to move cash around to cover it soon. And I was keeping that cash to the side to pay tax, so I have to fiddle things, but it's relatively nothing compared to what it used to be. Thank goodness. But I feel really bad for all the people with margin balance. And the Tesla call options are really getting destroyed. Anyone who's been buying Tesla call options anytime in the last 2 years, they're pretty much heavily underwater, almost throwing money into nothing at this point. Tax write-offs now. So it's like it's really a rough time. I mean, you could say some of it's macro market driven. You could say some of it's Elon being, distracted, or the perception of Elon being distracted, even if he isn't. That affects the market. if enough people think that he is, they're going to sell their Tesla shares. You could say it's his political divisiveness. There's a lot of reasons. It could just be momentum, wearing off. I think a large part of the drop has been all the call options that all of us retail holders were a huge part of Tesla. I mean, how many of us have been sitting on long-term call options the last few years of Tesla and heard stories of people like, I did very well on long-term call options. I mean, I did really bad and did really well a couple of years, but I've done really bad many years. But there's lots of stories like me out there that have done well with Tesla call options. So how many retail investors have been buying tons of call options the last 2 years, and now those are becoming worthless? That's a big part of the drop, I think, is the decay of these of delta on all these call options, whether it's from theta, mostly it's from delta as the Tesla price drops, but it's a combination of theta and delta. Effectively, when you bought when people out there who are listening to this bought Tesla call options, you're actually buying indirectly Tesla shares, okay? Because the market maker on the other side is buying Tesla shares to hedge this call option they sold you because they don't want to have any risk on their books, right? So you're buying the equivalent amount of shares of the delta on that Tesla call option. And so as Tesla goes up, it's like you're actually buying more shares automatically as the person who sold you that call option has to hedge and buy more. As the delta goes up, they have to buy more shares to stay risk neutral, delta neutral, they call it. But as the reverse happens, as the stock goes down, guess what? You're actually, without even knowing it, the call option you bought that you indirectly bought Tesla shares on, well, now you're indirectly selling Tesla shares, equivalent to the amount of shares that were bought over time as that call option turns to nothing. So all the money that all of us put into call options that helped float the Tesla stock price up substantially, in my opinion. And now we're seeing the reverse effect. All these call options are becoming worthless, and it's actually just Tesla shares being sold to the market who buys shares instead of options. And so institutions that don't hold millions of they have millions of shares. They can't afford to have there's no liquidity to buy 100,000 long-term call options. That's not how they operate anyway. They're getting these great deals, eating up all these Tesla shares at $100 a share right now because of all our kind of silly, dumb. Not silly. In retrospect, it is, but it could have made us more money. At some point, there's a top, right? And so when the top happens, it just causes a huge snowball effect on the way down because all of our call options indirectly cause a ton of sales of the Tesla shares.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a long
it's
rant,
interesting.
sorry.
No, but I think it's an underappreciated aspect of this because you're right. Like you've got a year of theta decay, plus you've got much more significant delta decay. So it does cause open market purchases on the way up and selling on the way down. So I think it's a really important aspect that is easy to miss, and it definitely did kind of I think help to get things where they were on the way up, but it certainly added fuel to the fire on the way down too. And we did get a short interest report a while ago, and it was actually lower than I was kind of expecting. I think it was in the 4 or 5% range. So it doesn't seem to be the case necessarily that there's some huge kind of inordinate amount of short selling that's causing this drop.
I don't think so. I think
So that
there's
was
just moderate short amounts, just like normal in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. So which is kind of unfortunate because it's taking a lot of the kind of gunpowder for a quick rebound off the table. I think you really would need some pretty significant kind of fundamental beats to move the price back up where it has been, or a massive improvement in FSD or autonomy or the energy side of the business or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean the bull thesis in my mind has taken a little bit of a beating. Not entirely, and certainly not in the long term, I don't think, but I think the short term is going to be a lot more challenging than certainly we thought maybe a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Melody 1974, one of our favorite loyal subscribers, says it's not the call options, Emmett, it's Gary Black's fault. Yeah, Gary Black, I love his perspective. I feel I'm like, oh man, he tweets out the list of catalysts. I used to get excited, right? But now I look back and the list of catalysts Gary tweets out, every one of them in retrospect has been a big downward like the opposite of a catalyst down for the Tesla stock price the last few months, whether it's, Q3 earnings or the production and delivery report, or I feel like all these supposed catalysts are turning into like negative events for Tesla. It's really been
Yeah.
brutal.
Well,
I hope
like
they turn the
in
catalysts to go other way pretty soon. I hope they do, they even
I
out. Yeah.
I really do too, because I like in Q2, we were talking about this a lot, but like, yeah, we were kind of coming out of the Shanghai shutdown, and it wasn't a great quarter. It was still pretty good, but I was thinking, man, like Q3, we're going to be ramping all these factories back up again. Q4, even more so, and then we'll be like over the Twitter overhang by then, and it's just like, I was just like in my head, I was like adding it all up together, and I was just like, this man, the stock is going to be on fire, like by this time. That was my
Yeah.
thought like 9 months ago. And you're right. Like all these potential catalysts have just completely gone the other way. So it's certainly frustrating and sad. And can you only hope that the potential recession is not as bad as people might be thinking, and that the demand concerns are hopefully a little bit overblown.
Yeah. How low do you think the stock can go, Matt? If you just have to guess off the top of your head, just like if you know, if you had a dream or something, knowing what you know, what do you think the lowest realistic price, like realistic meaning like how irrational, the stock
Yeah.
market can be very rational and short term, how low do you, I mean, we're about to get below $100. I mean, I think there's a high likelihood we're going to dip below 100 at some point, even if for a short time. Maybe that'll be the low. I don't know, but I feel like it's trending that direction. There's like kind of that 3-day rule when institutional sellers
Yeah.
come in, they sell for, they sell shares for 3 days in a row right after an event that they want to sell. Maybe these delivery numbers were underwhelming, so like some institutions are selling today, tomorrow, and the next day or something. Who knows? But it just seems if the Nasdaq and the S&P also goes down suddenly like 5%, then Tesla is definitely going to be below $100 imminently. So what do you think the lowest Tesla would go at this point would be?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that earlier today, actually, and you and I haven't spoken about that yet. But like I did a even more worst case scenario version of my model for next year.
Hmm.
Just so that, like, what if demand really is way worse than we were thinking, even in our kind of previous bear cases? So I dropped down volumes, I dropped down margins, prices, all that sort of stuff, and got to roughly $4 of earnings per share for next year. To be clear, this is not the case that I think is likely, but I think it's one that has more credibility than I would have given it a month or two ago.
Hmm.
But in that case, like if you ascribe a 10 multiple to that, then that's a share price of $40, which seems absolutely ludicrous to me, but I think it's at least possible.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thinking. What about you? Do you have a thought on like what's
Yeah. I mean, I would also say 50, $60 is kind of like, and that assumes, the Tesla has to lower prices significantly, compressing their margins. People are worried about demand, and the recession is worse. The Fed's, tanking the whole economy, and in that event, the S&P, Peru, that global, that macroeconomic analyst on Twitter, he's right, and the S&P drops another 20% from here or whatever, another flush in the next few months. So, I mean, all those bad things happen the next few months. Yeah, it's possible. Um, we the stock gets cut in half from here again. You just don't know. So I mean, I feel terrible. But I also think there's also a chance we rebound from here. The sky is falling. That's when the stock turns around, when nobody thinks it's going to sometimes. So you just don't know. It's very uncertain. It's certainly nerve wracking as a Tesla investor. I mean, maybe we should just get to some Q&A instead of being so doom and gloom here. Let's get to some Q&A from Alec. Can maybe post some Q&A the next 20 minutes, and hopefully there'll be some positivity here. Question from Stu in the YouTube comments. Do you believe that Musk's Twitter chaos has hurt demand in North America? I mean, I think there are some people, some outliers who will buy a Ford Mach-E instead of a Model 3 now. But I also think there are some outliers who will buy a Model 3 or a Model Y instead of a Ford Mach-E now, like on the other end of the political spectrum, too. So I think those outliers cancel each other out to some degree. I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
yeah, I think a little bit, but I really don't think it's a meaningful impact. And I think he's also ingratiating himself to some new potential buyers, which I think will be especially important in the truck market, which they're launching into this year.
Yeah.
So like to me, this is not This is much more a macro story than a, Elon
Yeah.
hurt the Tesla brand story. I think that did play a small part in kind of what's happened, but I think it's a relatively small impact.
Yeah.
And before we jump to the next question, I did see somebody in the comments saying like, you guys need to learn about valuation. You could still find that Tesla's undervalued, but you not be talking about some of the stuff you do talk about now. I started my career in valuation. I'm very like familiar with valuation, and that's why I'm so bullish in the long term. But the question is like, where do we go from here in the next 12 months or so? There's a lot of uncertainty around that. Where we are
Yeah.
10 years from now, I still 100% believe we're going to be the most valuable company in the world. But there's it's going to be a real rocky road between now and then.
Yeah.
You have an economic cycle which is in a low point right now. Eventually that
Yeah.
will recover, and the trend of EVs taking more market share will take place, and that there's all sorts of reasons to be bullish in the long term.
Yeah.
But in the short term, there's a lot of pain being experienced right now.
Yeah. I mean, Apple could get cut in half here from here too at the same time. It's not just Tesla only, it could be all the tech stocks, PEs are suddenly going to be, cut in half. So,
Yeah.
and Tesla is not even a tech stock. It's seen by most as like an automotive stock by a lot of people anyway.
Well,
So,
yeah. I mean, look at where the multiples are. It's like
yeah.
definitely on the track
Yeah.
to being compressed to automotive levels.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next question is from X Henning Schultz on Twitter. Why are they not publishing cars in transit? Because they are not high enough to compensate the gap. I mean, I think Troy and others have deduced the number of cars in transit. So it's around 50,000 or more than 50,000 now. I think it was like 30,000 last quarter or 20, something like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's like an extra metric. Maybe they don't want to publish more metrics than they need to. Um, what do you think, Matt? Any thoughts on why they don't publish that particular number?
Yeah, like to me, you hit it. You can deduce the number, so it's not like. To me,
Yeah,
it'd be like in the financials, you've got like the working capital, which you can calculate, and then it's like why does you calculate the change in working capital? Well, because you can just do the math and figure it out. So I don't think it's
yeah,
necessary to go into that level of detail when it's not particularly pertinent in my mind.
yeah. And the only other option would be the cars going to showrooms or something like that, and that's sort of de minimis. I mean, they're not adding a whole bunch of if anything, they're
Yeah.
lowering the amount of showrooms, I would think, globally.
And Elon did make a comment a while back about like why don't you do the Model 3 and the Model Y separately, like report those separately. And I think he said there's a risk if you go too granular with your reporting that people will read too much into very short-term changes in any of those numbers. So it can become noise instead of
Yeah,
signal. And so I think like if this truly is mostly about the delivery wave kind of ending, which is a good thing. Like we've wanted that to end for a long time. And so finally they're doing that now. Then you don't need to just add more noise of how many are in transit when it's just like it's pretty clear to see what the difference between production and deliveries are.
yeah. Next question from Breakfast Pizza on YouTube. How much do you think the Tesla community impacts retail investor emotions negatively? We have a lot of YouTubers, Twitter users that follow Tesla full time and amplify short term reactions. Yeah, I mean, it certainly adds a lot of emotion to Tesla on the upside and the downside. I mean, you see people get crazy going, on the upside as well as, crazy on the downside right now. So, yeah, I mean, the Tesla community is good and bad. I'd say by far it's more good, but some of the negativeness of having a Tesla community that spends all their time on Tesla, it sort of magnifies every single catalyst in the stock either direction. I suppose. I think it's very good overall to have all this information at our fingertips, but we all have biases, and so it certainly reflects in our work. Yeah. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I have always tried to be dispassionate in our kind of analysis. Like, of course, we support the company, and it's impossible not to be emotional. But 6 months ago, 9 months ago, I forget when it was, we were interviewing a series of bears and trying to poke holes in our own bull thesis.
Hmm.
And so I think it's good for the community to try to have these nuanced conversations and debate where you're not only, being an echo chamber of like pump, pump, pump. And I think there are a few channels, although probably fewer than there used to be, that do kind of engage in that sort of stuff. And I just frankly don't follow them.
Yeah.
But I worry that people will like follow us and get into like options trades or margins trades, and that really concerns me. I don't really want people to do that without a real thorough understanding of what the risk and reward profile looks like.
Yeah.
So I do think that those who are kind of choosing to be in the public stage to some degree or another have a duty to kind of be nuanced and reasonable. And I don't think that's always the case.
Yeah. Farzad just said in the comments, thanks for not following him, Matt. Did you say you don't
Blocked.
follow? Oh, he's blocked, so you don't see the comment. I do. I see. I'm just kidding. All right. Yeah. Next question here is from Evan Glansman, the YouTube comments. Question: thoughts on Michael Burry tweeting that the Fed will flip from QT back to QE in the near term and will lead to inflation rearing its head again? I mean, we've been speculating for a while that we think that the story of 2023 is going to become deflation instead of inflation, and of course, the Fed is going to have to shut down interest rates and lower interest rates drastically pretty quickly once that happens, once that becomes a story. I'm not sure it leads to inflation again, though. I mean, that's a little too far out. I mean, I think they would learn and be a little more careful in which data they look at and lean on to try to prevent inflation from coming back. So, yeah, I'm not so sure about that, but I do think that the Fed will flip and pivot. And I guess QE, do you think they'll do that again, Matt? Quantitative
I mean,
easing
it's
instead of
it's
quantitative
hard.
tightening.
It's hard to imagine them doing such a full flip like so quickly, and like clearly Jerome Powell knew that he was going to crush the stock market and didn't care.
Yeah.
So like I don't think that the stock market. I mean, clearly it's not in the Fed's mandate. There were some people who thought that maybe there'd be like some soft power that like banks or fund managers had to say like, oh, like you pushed it too far, let's go back to QE, or at least like lower interest rates, lower the amount of the interest rate increases. And he does not seem to be doing that at all. So, I think to assume that like we do a full 180, like pedal to the metal with like the combination of QE plus like part of the huge problem was the government spending, like these $1 trillion stimulus packages. I mean, the combination of QE and STIMI was like, I think what really drove a lot of the bubbles that we saw.
Yeah.
And I guess you do see the government like passing this $1 trillion bill, or what was it, 400 something billion late last year. So it's potential you could get the same series of events, but in my mind, it's like a lot of the inflation is a lot more supply chain driven than just the Fed driven. So I think it's like part of this was the COVID, was shipping rates from China being like 10x the historic rates. All these sorts of like structural supply chain issues that the Fed tried to solve by just printing money. So I don't think we're going to get quite into that same situation again.
Yeah. Next question from T Nelly on YouTube. Why do you think Tesla continues to hold off on marketing and PR? It's desperately needed. Yeah, I mean, it's an Elon thing. I've been saying for a while, I've thrown out the suggestion a few times that maybe Tesla can have like an official Tesla PR Twitter handle, and it can, only respond to actual reporters who tweet their questions in an open source way on Twitter to the Tesla PR Twitter handle. And then Tesla PR Twitter can respond in an open source way to that reporter. So everyone can see in an open source kind of way the actual interaction the reporter has with the Tesla PR Twitter handle. And then the reporter is free to write their, stories the way they want in their publications. That's fine. But everyone knows on Twitter, that's where you can see kind of a centralized place where you have a open source communication between Tesla PR and the reporters. So I think that would be great to do. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that would be that would be like right up Elon's alley to do it that way. But he seems very stern on just PR and marketing being a waste of money and resources. Any thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's time for that. I think that was one of the things we got from the conversation about Tom Zhu as well, was like Elon didn't really want to call it PR, but what Tom was doing in China was like definitely PR. And that was what was needed after the lady was like stomping on the hood, and it became like a national news story that was really damaging the brand. I
Yeah.
think you've got a similar situation, although probably to a lesser degree, with what's going on in the United States. And so I think if you did have some marketing dollars to kind of help boost demand, educate people who still like think range anxiety is something to be concerned about. So it's like educate people with a little smart marketing, and then have PR to kind of battle some of this extreme misinformation that gets put out there, or even just to highlight some of the stuff like this car that just drove off a cliff and all four
Yeah.
passengers were
That's the
safe. Like,
safety.
this
I'm gonna
is
retweet this
amazing.
tweet.
There
Anyone
are
who's on
so
Twitter,
many.
I just retweeted the tweet of the video that Elon liked of the actual helicopter saving the people. Did you see that video? There's an
Yeah,
actual video, like a
it's
2-minute video. Yeah.
it's crazy. Like if you drive your car off a cliff, you're gonna die. But
Yeah.
apparently not in a Tesla. Like
No.
that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like the children were unharmed and the parents had
Yeah.
minor injuries.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
like that
I
should be
remember
getting more
growing up.
attention.
Yeah, growing up watching shows like the Dukes of Hazards and all these like movies, you'd see cars run off cliffs and just blow up into like big flames, right? Well, it doesn't happen with a Tesla. It doesn't blow up into big flames like an internal combustion engine car. So you have all these airbags go off, and then it's like a giant floating balloon or something. Maybe you're kind of, I mean, that's to say it's probably a lot worse than that, but you're kind of like protected much more so in a Tesla. Not only is the structure much more strong, and well designed, but you don't have the car blowing up into flames, exploding on you when it lands and makes impact. You have all these balloons around you impact you. So this family of four, two grown-ups and two kids, 10 and like 4 years old or something, they're all like fine apparently. It's like insane. And after you see the wreckage of this, it's like, wow, like this needs to get out there. There needs to be marketing, like make that a Super Bowl commercial, like turn that one event into a Super Bowl commercial. Like
Yeah.
how much demand
Just
is that going
interview
to
the
spur?
family, like tell the
Yeah.
story, like do a 1 minute
Yeah.
interview. Like
Yeah.
that would do so much to change people's
Yeah.
perception. I agree.
Safety is like it should be the top of people's mind. I mean, what was it? Volvo, I think, was the one that made a huge name for itself as being the safest car. Well, I mean, I think like Tesla's by far the safest. That's like should be the top of priority when families are buying cars they're driving with their kids in and stuff. I don't know. To me, it's like the top priority. Like I want a Tesla because of the safety. I love the technology and the car, but the safety, if it wasn't safe, if it was less safe than an internal combustion engine car, I would not be driving a Tesla. I would own one and drive it by myself, but I wouldn't be driving my kids around in it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question from Mark Zuckerberger in the YouTube comments. Is there a danger of an enemy takeover? Apple buys Tesla, something like this is possible? I don't think so. I doubt it. I mean, some people, the Saudi sovereign wealth fund, once almost took Tesla private. There was apparently a handshake deal between Elon and the guy who runs that. So that was back when Tesla was not making money, though. They were in growth mode and they were like struggling, not to raise more capital. They had to raise capital several times after that. But Tesla's way beyond that. I don't think Tesla investors would have any of that. I don't think Tesla investors would approve of a takeover. What do you think, Matt?
No, I don't think so either. So, I mean, there's a very limited pool of candidates who could even attempt something like that. With Tesla, I mean, even still, it's a $330 billion company. That they're still one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah.
So, like the number of companies or like sovereign funds who have the pockets deep enough to even attempt that is very small. And to your point, like Elon plus like shareholders have like very clear kind of power to vote against that. So, I mean, if somebody comes in and offers like 100% premium, maybe, but then again, that shrinks the pool of potential candidates down further.
Yeah. All right. Next question from one car nut on the YouTube comments. Do you think the Bears will ever get on board and support Tesla if it gets down to their predicted targets and they can claim that they were right? That's a great question. I think there's probably some bears that have flipped over the years. And it's always a big deal when there's one of the prominent bears. I remember Citron, they flipped. Andrew left from Citron. That was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a couple others.
Gary Black was a bear. And I was a bear for a long time too.
You were a bear. Yeah. Yeah. But there's been some like people in the media that were like, like it'll be news when like Gordon Johnson flips. I don't know if he is
I don't know if
capable of
he would.
flipping, though.
Yeah.
I think there's something there under the table, some
Yeah.
other incentive structure there that's causing him to be super bearish. I'm not sure what. There's a connection with him and Jim Chanos of some sort. I'm not sure if Jim Chanos would ever. He's not really like that, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, some bears, it's just in their DNA to just hate Tesla and think that Tesla's, unless Tesla has a PE of like under 5, like some of the other automakers, that they're doomed, that they shouldn't be where they are. Their stock shouldn't be trading where it is or something. So that's my thought. But a good question. Yeah. Some bears will flip though. Yeah, and already have. From Raymond Chen in the YouTube comments, can Tesla switch to megapack production focus and use every spare battery? Not clear what their margin is, but it seems recession proof and a good backlog. Yeah, great question, Raymond. I do think the megapack is incredible value proposition. We talked about that recently, Matt, in last week's stream or the
Mhm.
stream week before, but it seems recession proof. And yeah, I mean, in the past, it seems to make sense that Tesla just makes as many batteries as they can, gets their hold as many batteries as they can, and fulfill as many as they can with the cars and the vehicles, and then anything above that go to the mega packs and the power walls. I think that's kind of like makes sense from a big picture standpoint. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of like, will they actually have spare batteries? Like, I think implied in this question is that they have more like automotive battery production capabilities than they have demand for their cars.
Yeah,
If that's true, then maybe you direct a little bit of that to mega packs. But that'll probably be less efficient than what's going on at the Lathrop factory. We've got this dedicated line. It's like highly efficient. You're using LFP, and so like if you're to just, you can't just like use whatever random batteries you have and just immediately like make mega packs out of Fremont, for example. So it's
it's a
not like a
plan
super
ahead of
simple.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So if they've got supply and they can kind of see where things are going, then like I fully expect them to continue to ramp up mega pack production, just because their backlog is like so gigantic, and that's
How
not
much
true
if
of.
you I mean, we should have Josh's Blonde or Jordan, the limiting factor, on again to talk about another roundtable discussion of energy. But I wonder what you think the lead time is that Tesla would need to know of in order to divert more of the battery supply towards mega packs versus car battery packs. Like, how much would it need? Would they need to see 6 months or 9 months or 3 months? How far ahead would they need to make that plan change of that divert the supply one direction versus the other? I wonder.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know they have done that before, because they said that they use kind of like the scraps of the auto
Yeah.
business for their like power walls and some other things.
Mhm.
So they've got some level of flexibility, but I think to do that at scale, at like tens of gigawatt hours instead of just like a few megawatt
Yeah.
hours each quarter or something like that, is like, that's a whole different animal.
Yeah. They probably need like 6 months or a year or more to like really,
Yeah.
if they for some reason thought that cars demand was not gonna go above what it is now, but mega pack demand would be infinite and they had to redivert their battery resources going forward, how long until the battery resources, does that? I think how far ahead of time, and I don't know, I probably need like at least a year. But they have, yeah, I don't know. They have different flavors of batteries. I know Elon's referred to it as like, a Baskin Robbins of flavors of battery chemistries they can use to be flexible. So I wonder, yeah, interesting questions. From Media Cafe Online LLC, when do you estimate commercial energy or other part of the business becoming material to earnings? I mean, I think we're on the cusp of that with the megapacks. Isn't that basically what the megapacks are? Commercial energy?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the whole Lathrop ramp is. I think is like a dark horse in earnings for 2023. We were talking a little bit about this. I think it was last week on this Sum Zero character, who was saying like the mega pack earnings are going to be bigger than the entire automotive business earnings next year. Like, I don't believe that's the
Yeah.
case. He's calling for 60% gross margins. I think that's hopium. But
Yeah.
I do think it's going to start like to be the. I think it's going to transition from the thing that like literally nobody cared about or put into their models. Like, if you look at any of the Wall Street analysts, they don't have an energy projection, because it's just like it rounds to zero, and it always has.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore 40 gigawatt hours coming online and say that that's going to be immaterial. especially given the fact that it seems to be ramping pretty quickly already. So I think it's going to be a pretty big step up. Last quarter, Q3, there was 2.1 gigawatt hours deployed. It wouldn't surprise me if we get close to like 4 or something like that this quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get to steady state out of Lathrop, it'll be closer to 10, which is really meaningful. I mean, you're talking about, I forget what the math is. I think it's like 5 billion of revenue a quarter, something like that. And so if you've got 25% margins, which is maybe a little bit more reasonable once they truly hit scale, then you're talking about like $1 billion of earnings in a quarter. So I think it's going to be material pretty soon, and I think it could be a real like catalyst in the short term or the medium term.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more question, then a closing remark or two I have here. From Guduri, Naveen, and Kumar in the YouTube comments. Emmett and Matt, for stock price, there are multiple parameters to influence it. Do you agree with delivery estimates of 1.7 million for 2024, or do you think it is too little? I think that's too little. I think they're going to go up from there. I think they're going to, I don't know if they're going to put a specific number. I think they're going to continue to guide for 50%, on average growth. I think they'll just keep it at that. But 50% on a 1.3 or 1.4, they're like in that range somewhere this year, close to 1.4. So that would be like almost 2 million. So I think it'll be way above 1.7 million for 2020. Oh, he's saying for 2024.
He's saying for 24.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it'll be way above that, I think. I mean, you have the Cybertruck ramping up by then. I mean, I think 2024 will be over 2 million for sure. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think the only way it's not is if there's some massive kind of recession and demand issue. But no, I definitely think 2024. Like, if they're not at 1.7 million by 2024, then we're seriously off in our thesis here.
Yeah. So just to end, a couple things here. So the probability lab, we reference it sometimes. January 2024, so a year from now, January 19th, that option expiry, 1 year from now, the 10%, according to the options markets, the pricing right now with Tesla trading at 105, there's a 10% chance, only a 10% chance Tesla will be $200 or above, according to this option market. Okay. Seems kind of crazy. And on the downside, there's a 10% chance, there's or less, a Tesla will be $28 or less. So on the other side, $28 on the downside, $200 on the upside. That's the 10% confidence interval, 80% confidence interval of the probability lab. That's what the options market is telling us with the current pricings of calls and put options for January 2024.
What's the premium on a $28 put?
On the $20 put? Oh my gosh, I don't know. I have to pull that up on a different screen. But this screen here, yeah, it's probably like, let's see. I'll pull it up here.
I'd be happy to sell some $28 puts.
Oh my gosh, if I had capital to like sit there, I would do that with my capital. Yeah, I mean, imagine just like getting assigned a $28 put on like a flash crash dip or something, and then it going back up to $50 or $100, and you're like, oh yeah, got the low. Yeah, but you never know with the flash crashes and stuff. It's, margin is not good. I hope people are figuring that out, learning. And the other thing I wanted to say is the employees of Tesla, right? I mean, you have all these employees of Tesla working hard. There's all this noise. And I would say that employees of Tesla are probably among the luckiest right now because they're getting averaged in. Yeah, hopefully they're participating in their stock incentive plans.
Yeah,
but they're getting averaged in at ridiculously great prices here. I mean, this is going to
for sure.
5 or 8 years. It's just going to be amazing. Like, talk to all the employees that were in the first waves of the run up of Tesla in the 2010 to 2012 or 2014 to 2018. The employees that worked those years and kept their stock incentives going. This is another window like that. Right now as an employee of Tesla. So they should, and they're still getting their income, their paycheck on top of that, obviously, right? So the $30 put option for January is almost $2. It's like $1.87, $1.86. Yeah. So that's pretty high for a $30 put option like that. And then someone was asking me to tell one of my dad jokes from this book. One of the my kids gave me. We'll end on a funny note here.
I have a feeling I'm going to be rolling my eyes.
Did I tell a joke from this book last time or no? I forget. Did I?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, then I'll tell you the joke I remember that I told. Why does a squirrel swim on their back?
I don't know.
Anyone in the comments?
Something about nuts.
Yeah, to keep their nuts dry.
Gosh.
That's terrible.
That's pretty good for a dad joke, though. I gotta say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, another one is how do you find? Oh, this is terrible. How do you find? This is the last one. We'll end it. I know people aren't here to listen to jokes. How do you find a blind man at the beach?
How do you find a blind man at a beach? I don't know.
Come on, it's not hard.
Oh.
All right, let's end it there before we get in trouble. These are terrible dad jokes. I got this for Christmas from my kids' dad jokes book. It's pretty good. So, all right, guys, we'll sign off, and hopefully next week won't be another low. I fear it will. It seems every Tuesday. All right.